Welcome back. You're watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime. We continue pace with the discussion. Right now, we want to look at what happened yesterday. And we've seen the dailies today, days of chaos. Death is headlining the Standard, shutdown the Daily Nation. We have 8 die in demos. And also we have the Business Daily. How markets are shrugging off opposition-led protest is what is in the dailies today. But just to act as a segue to our discussion on how that has affected the economy and moving forward, how can we get out from this particular morass? We just want to hear some of the sentiments that came from the leaders yesterday regarding the protest. The soapbox is up next.
Always said that these meetings remain peaceful until police decide to break them up with bullets and tear gas. Late last night, we received intelligence of a most heinous plan by Kenya Kwanza to ferry armed goons who would attack peaceful attendees of our rally in Kamkunji. These goons had expressed orders to shoot directly into the crowd while enjoying police protection. It will be trial by fire many times, but we have been through trial by fire before. So we soldier on. As Kenyans, you have a duty to liberate ourselves as we have always done. It has never been easy. It will not be easy, but it has to be done.
We cannot have a country where men and women bearing arms use them against innocent citizens. We are told that we have lost lives in Mulolongo, we have lost lives in Emali, and surely this cannot be acceptable. I think we also made it plain when we issued the last statement, which was read by the Honorable Mother Karua, that individual policemen and women who use excessive force will be held liable individually. And Kenyans are asked to take stock of those excesses because this cannot go unpunished.
In future, when you organize a demonstration, they are not peaceful, they are causing destruction, then you must be held liable so that we can have well-organized demonstration which ensures the right of the other person.
Vandalization of infrastructure within the express, railway, and installation that Kenyans spend too much money putting up, that cannot qualify to be within the ambit of picketing and the demonstration.
I want to encourage the youth out there that they should not be used in these demonstrations. Time has come for the youth to actually exercise their own rights independently.
We have agreed he's a powerful man. He can say this country to go for a holiday and it goes to a holiday. But we want to appeal because we cannot say that we can continue the way we are continuing.
All right, that is yesterday. And of course, we want to hear first of all, because KEPSA has spoken regarding this as well. And, we have the KEPSA Foundation chair here, Patrick Obath, just to give us a glimpse of yesterday and how also businesses are being affected. You looked at the eye-popping figure that we saw, that the economy was grounding to a halt, the looting that has happened, and the unfortunate incident that 9 lives have been lost. Just speaking on some of the figures that we do have, there's 7, there's 8, there's 9, but we can stick with 9 so far until we get the official statistics.
I think that figure may sound staggering, but it's also the lost opportunity for the day, plus the damage and whatever it is and so forth. So when you put all that together, it actually becomes a huge figure, right? Whether you recover it by trading in other days is a moot point. But during that day, the opportunity for business of that amount was lost across the country, plus the damage that has happened. It looks that way. But when you look at these events that are unfolding and that have been unfolding, in my own reflection, it looks like, why do we do the same thing and expect a different result?
Right.
Yeah? I mean, the police, the way they handle these kind of situations is exactly the same. And that has been hardwired. In this day and age, when you have protests or people are trying to go out and exercise what, quote, has been given within the Constitution, the right to assemble and do whatever it is and so forth,
Yes.
there are better ways of handling it. But unfortunately, the rhetoric that you hear before these things happen prepares everybody for exactly what happened yesterday. If that rhetoric wasn't there, and the police does what I experienced when I was a university student elsewhere in the world, when you went out to make noise, the police just formed a barricade with a shield, and they just stood there, and you pelted them with stones and whatever it is for as long as you wanted, and nothing happened. At the end of it, you just got tired of throwing stones, and they moved. And they moved, and you moved back, and you continued throwing stones, and they moved. Nothing, no tear gas was fired, zero. And people even came up to the point that they were right in front of the shield. And the police would just look at you. But the minute you physically went to attack that shield, that's when you had a problem. And in Kenya, people are now used that the minute the police comes out, you start throwing stones. And they start throwing tear gas. This standoff situation that we are getting from both sides of the coin, I think needs to change. We are being driven as a country to a precipice that we don't need to get to as a result of the posturing of politicians. And if those politicians stop posturing and consider that this is their country, they have to run a country and not destroy it, right? And not just to point a finger and say so-and-so is destroying it. It's both by engaging in the way they're engaging are leading to that destruction. We need a different paradigm to enable people to state what they want. And the statement of that the country is going down, is expensive and so forth, what is the solution? What is the alternative? I have not heard anybody saying what that alternative is. It's the same thing like throwing stones at a room. Yeah? But you're not offering a solution to what you're throwing stones at. Yeah? So the opposition should also come up and say, we have a solution which is X. But I have not heard that solution anywhere. And it may just be that whatever everybody is fighting about is a reality, and we have to grin and bear what the stark reality is. And until somebody comes up with a solution, what is being done is the solution that there is. And don't just throw stones at a solution when you don't have a solution yourself. Put it out in the public. Let us debate it. Let us hear it. Yeah? So, in terms of, as a private sector, really, we are looking for solutions, not fights about the proposals. We are looking for solutions that can be debated, can be put into place. And if the finance bill or whatever it is was contained there was wrong, what is the alternative to what was put there? And I haven't had that. I know a lot of people put in their comments during the parliamentary stage. Unfortunately, there has been no report as to why things were not put in or were left out, etc., etc., etc. And I think that is part of the dialogue that is missing. So I think what happened over the last 24 hours, I think, is deplorable.
Absolutely.
It does not need to happen.
Yeah.
But it is not the people who are down there who do whatever it is. It's the leadership of this country that has caused that to happen. And both are responsible.
Both are responsible.
Both are responsible.
So there is no point of actually raising accusatory fingers towards each other that, oh, you send goons, that the people who are running around looting and destroying the property.
It is the narrative that they have been throwing that causes what happened to happen. Right? Mandamano is fine. You can go and walk, whatever it is, so long as the narrative has changed. And people know that they can walk peacefully. In certain parts of the country, people did that.
Yeah.
People actually walked peacefully. Right? And so what was different about that part of the country compared to the others?
All right. Should they also have exercised some patience? Because this is a matter in court regarding just the cost of living with the Finance Act being challenged. And now we have that particular matter being taken to Supreme Court to constitute a three-judge bench to decide and determine on the matter. Should they have an exercise and wait for this matter to be determined by the courts? Then that will have informed now maybe the demonstrations.
But why are they?
No.
Why are you demonstrating? It's interesting because first and foremost, I think it's important that it's really sad, and we should condemn with the strongest time possible. One life is too much, and people must take responsibility. We can sit here debate, but it's not you who's affected. But if it's somebody from your family, you feel it. And it's interesting that you can get killed. And there's a common, and it's the same thing I borrowed from Patrick. Rider has been this damn thing since 2003. Every year we have election, there are issues. Does he expect different results? He goes the same thing. He's a same fella who was even shown as a president. I think he also needs to take topic. Look at this senator who took the finance bill to court. He never went to the streets. But he went through a powerful out where we really have stepped back and look at that finance bill. There are better ways to look at it. What you can do is get your team, sit down. This is the cost of living is going up, and it's expensive today. Petrol is up, right? You're talking about whatever you try is up. What is the alternative budget in terms of dealing with the economy? Yeah, we are going to maybe. I was interesting sharing somebody in I think either Indonesia or Bangkok. Yeah, Bangkok, Indonesia, and they were saying they have a different way of how they charge you petrol when you go to a gas station. If you go there with the Lexus, you pay more. If I go with a Probox, I pay less.
That is very discriminatory.
Why? Because they are looking in terms of you have the capacity to have this kind of luxury vehicles. The other alternative they also use, they look at the public vehicles. They look at public vehicles. And public vehicles, you get the subsidy there. So you get the person and you have a public vehicle because most people are using it, then you get a subsidy. There's a certain way we can deal than going to the street at home. And you say every week, what different would it be next week? And probably what would be different is people going to more shops and looting. There's a shop which was looted down this side. That owner who has put a lot of effort in that, where is he now as we talk? At the end of the day, we are making the situation bad as it is.
Right.
Let me comment, because I don't entirely agree. I think, in my view, the greatest responsibility in what happened yesterday lies with the government. You have a constitutional mandate to protect life, to protect property in accordance with the law. And so if that does not happen, you take the responsibility. In our tradition, where I come from, you cannot compare someone who has that glass full of milk and another one who is with nothing. You have to be careful because you'll spill that milk because it takes two to tangle. So from the word go, for me the issue is not really about the manner in which these things happened or not. It's about the fundamental principle that we have, that you as a Kenyan have a right to protest. Let's start from there. So last week we saw a very peaceful protest when people from Kibera were allowed to march all the way to Kamkunji, escorted by police. Nothing happened. Another team marched all the way from Embakasi, all the way to Kamkunji. Nothing happened. When the police give you the opportunity to do what you want, nothing will happen. They provide escort and people will be peaceful. The moment you announce a day earlier that all protests are illegal, then you know you will prepare for confrontation, because these guys want to exercise the right that they believe they have, and the police have been instructed not to allow it. So that's the recipe for chaos. That's one. Two, I think if I were the government, I would look at the larger picture. The larger picture is, why did this thing happen spontaneously in nearly half the counties in this country? It tells you, forget about Raila and the guys who are calling for those things, but across the country, in regions where people have never gone on the streets, like Ukambani, in regions like West or Nyeri, people have he has never carried a placard in his life, the professor here. His folks were not even in the university.
I'm a coward. Tennis with him. I'm a coward, you know.
He's a chicken.
I chicken out.
So I think there is clearly, and if I were President Ruto, I would be very worried that there is increasing resentment regarding this cost of living across the country. People are beginning to feel, the hardships, the pain of the cost of living, high cost of living. And so as we go on, this thing will just gain traction. It's not about the leaders, it's about the people. I think so you need to sometimes step back. Patrick, this bill was the only one where people came out in large numbers across the country to say, no, we want this. So alternative views were given to the government. The government largely ignored the views.
Exactly.
And so these people got an opportunity to ride on that now.
Yeah.
The opposition, they got a chance to ride on that resentment and that disaffection, disapproval by the public, and they got an opportunity. So in my view, really, as a government, you should not entertain a situation where police kill somebody with a live bullet. I mean, that's really not acceptable. 9 lives. The government seems to be so concerned about loss of economy. That's not important in my view. What is important is the lives you're losing. Last time it was 6. Yesterday it was 9. The next one, it might be 100. Demonstrations happened in France last week for a whole week continuously across France, and there was looting and burning of cars and everything. Not a single person was shot dead by police. It happened in the US.
In fact, it started because the police shot somebody dead.
Yeah.
17-year-old. We're coming to that, yeah.
When happened during Trump's time, you remember, and all that looting happened in New York and all those. January 6th, across the United States. Not a single person was killed. So the thing is, when you have the power, you have a greater responsibility to exercise restraint. You do not go into a fight in the same way these other guys are throwing stones. So why do you throw and then you start shooting? I think that the last point I want to say is that obviously the demonstrations don't look like, it's a tradition we have used to apply pressure on this government, or all the governments you've had in the past. Without pressure, whether in courts or outside courts, the government in this country have never tended to listen to us.
But Bill,
wait a minute.
Where has it worked since we started the demonstration?
No, but
it placed you here to speak freely as you do.
Indeed, yeah.
From Sabasaba, 1991 up to now.
Yeah.
Everything that we have done, we've got
Who was behind Sabasaba anyway?
So I think the issue is not about who. I think that would be misplaced. I think to try and say so and so must not be always doing this. No, I think the issue is we have an issue in this country regarding the cost of living. It's not going to be swept under the carpet. I'm telling you. So if I were the government, I would really be concerned about what is happening. The way people, this thing resonates across the country and everybody just comes out. Somebody says tomorrow we protest and people are coming out from across the country. I think we should be worried. We should really be worried, and it's time for dialogue. I think it's time government, really engage and the opposition, find out, just look, let us address these things in other ways. And that dialogue which is started, the way it just ended because of simple excuse, so must be out of the meeting. Yes. It was so trivial, and that was an opportunity, really, for the government to have...
to the bipartisan talks, and I think that was the issue to do with
I don't think there is much alternative to this.
Right. So
the strength of leadership is the ability to communicate.
Correct.
And collate people.
Correct.
That's the strength of leadership.
Not a weakness. Yeah.
It's not a weakness.
Dialogue is not a weakness.
The BAL, I share a different position. I concur with Professor in this regard. The only place I agree with my two colleagues is who takes the biggest blame. Of course, it's government, but for different reasons. I say for different reasons because for me, it's for government failing to do its role. But before that, a solution. I think if we separate the two issues, we have political problems, which in my view the opposition are trying to take advantage of and mangle with economic problems. If we separate those two issues, in my view, we should deal first with the economic issues, which is what's hurting most Kenyans. We cannot deny the fact that the cost of living is gone out of the roof. We can also not deny the fact that the finance law or the finance bill, I don't know still,
the act,
whichever animal,
is an act.
No, whether it's still an act because it's still held by, whichever name it is, let's call it the Finance Act for argument's sake, was problematic. And I think numerously has been said on this bench that implementing it was equally going to be problematic. And that's what we are seeing. So clearly there is a problem of leadership in that regard. Perhaps the way out of it, and maybe this where my departure with KEPSA, perhaps should have been calling for economic conference, national economic conference, to talk about these issues and find solutions.
They asked for it many times.
Because
they asked for it many times.
If you protect me, if you protect me, the bow.
But just
even on this table,
you know, I wish these questions were asked more during the last regime when KEPSA had that latitude to drive change, because we cannot deny the fact that the handshake has got us where we are. And KEPSA was very much, unfortunately, part of that problem. But that's not to belabor about it. How do we find a solution?
But the handshake has not brought us to where we are with the Finance Act. Because that's the bone of contention. That will be now misleading Kenyans.
Yes, I know. Yes. The main problem, the Finance Act is a symptom. The main problem is that we were in a hole, economic hole, when Jubilee was leaving power. You remember they left empty coffers? But that's not to belabor.
But Shem, I think we should not now be actually, belly aching on the issues that we've really crossed over the Rubicon as it is.
I agree.
Because and even you've sat on this particular bench and you said that the government should take responsibility because the buck stops with them. And so if we keep on hacking back on where we were, punching back on the previous regime, I think we'll just be treading waters.
Actually, we're saying the same thing. I think you remember I started by saying who takes the greatest blame is government. But I wasn't allowed to come to explain why I was giving the government the biggest blame. In terms of the history where we are coming from, in as much as that's now history, it totally cannot be ignored. Let's acknowledge that people got us where we are. Our solution is people are trying to find a solution, maybe not in the best way possible, but let's have a national economic conversation. The mandamanos are not going to solve it. It's only aggravating it. I know there's been talk of the law, of the Constitution, the article that talks about freedom of picketing. What many people forget about is you assume those people are unarmed. And I don't fully agree with my brother, Engineer Patrick. In parts of the world, if it's the West, where you could pelt officers with stones and nothing happens, that should be criminal. In fact, there is no greater crime that I know of, particularly in the US and UK. Attacking a lawful officer is a very serious crime. So to say that you could pelt officers with stones and they just stay there, I think is an issue that we must look at both sides. But having said that, here I want to agree with Dr. Ikuru Aukot. Aukot has challenged the government that they are too scared to hold people accountable. Everybody needs to be accountable. It's on record. There are people who say, for me to live, you must die. Okay? And in Kenya, there is what we call impunity. Professor Gituro can do things and get away with it. You, Patrick, try, you get into trouble. It's double speak. If we are talking of true democracy, it must apply across board. Unless we are saying that this constitution is only meant for people like him and not people like him. Because that's what we are realizing. So people need to be brought to account.
Yeah, but being brought to account before I come to Bilo, the question of you raising that, pelting of police, of course we don't really condone that our police officers should be...
That also has been a moving target.
Okay. Patrick seems to be the digital... Yes.
It's been hacked.
He's been hacked. In fact, you even throw me off. I've lost my track of thought. But I was raising the issue: how did we condone
pelting stones?
The pelting of stones of the police officers is not really admissible. But the fact that you're saying it's akin to saying that police officers should also respond with live bullets and kill wananchi.
Those are not my words.
No. I'm just saying, because now if you say on the flip side of police, should they also react by
allow me to say
by using live bullets?
Because this is serious. Police are equally not allowed to use excessive force. So when they use live bullets, that's excessive. So my point is that the blame is on both sides, even though government takes more blame. What I'm not hearing enough of is the blame on the other side, the opposition. That even as we do things, let's do it within decorum.
Right. Maybe you should grab a copy of the standard.
I just want to correct Shem on this, on the issue of police. When people are going to demonstrate, there's a particular type of police that is deployed. It is not your ordinary person who is on the patrol. And those people have a sort of a code of engagement, right? They don't come in and the minute somebody throws something and they throw back, right? They have a way whereby they accept that people have got the right to congregate and protest. And if some of that protest involves throwing things at police, that is the way they express certain things. And police have been told, stay calm. Those things will happen, they'll come and pass. So the police will still respond with force, but only when they are under extreme provocation.
Absolutely.
Right? But here, the minute you see somebody with something in their hand, you are shooting.
Kill.
That is what I'm saying is the wrong thing. And there is a certain method of engaging people who are in a demonstration, and the demonstration may have gone wrong. And that is what I'm saying, that we need to change the way we manage those kind of things.
I think
this can't get away.
Let's hear from Bill. We'll come to you.
Right.
No, you see, the point is, I refer to what happened in France. Hundreds were arrested. With all the destruction done by people, they didn't shoot people to death. They were arresting. Arrest people and take them to court.
Exactly.
But don't give an order, or don't shoot people to kill. Look, in France, what are people saying? It's on the headline. The same like the headline you have now on the screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're telling, the voices from all corners of the world are urging French President Macron to address the root cause of the arrest.
Exactly.
The issue is you don't deal with why are people protesting, or why you don't deal with the opposition. The issue is why are people protesting. The cost of living, address the cost of living issue. Nobody will follow Raila.
Yeah.
But if you say no, Raila, all his life, 2013, 2003, I mean, you're missing the point.
No.
And let me tell you, the more you use force as a government, the more you lose.
And
we have seen it all along from 2000 up to now.
It's important when, you can come here and you say it's government, but I think there's certain things we all, both sides of the earth, have to take responsibility. We have a responsibility of leadership we are given by the Kenyan people, whether in a position or the other, to make their lives better. That's my premises.
Sure.
And if I get Patrick, every day Patrick is the one giving problems or have no issues, then I don't need him.
So
not in the sense that I eliminate. No, I'm not headed there.
Right.
Supposing you are the one in opposition every time from 2003, you cannot be allowed to say what you want to say as an opposition.
But surely
you must be dealt with, you must be finished.
Professor.
And yet, if you don't have an opposition, when there was a handshake, people were complaining.
Listen, in the same way,
I think you're missing the point.
True.
we keep missing.
When I get back on track, when I keep doing the same thing, as Einstein said, and expect different results.
Even the government is doing the same thing, and they're expecting different results.
Go ahead, Prof.
Today we didn't go to the mosque.
the Bible. I think there is an important point being made here. We have a problem. We have a saying in my mother tongue that, if somebody stronger than you breaks the pipe of your mother, instead of following the fellow who has broken that pipe, you look for your mother and complain. You also don't put this pipe properly. Where you leave it where people can step on it. Somebody who is stronger than your mother has done that to you. I see a situation here where there are certain Kenyans and there are super Kenyans. if we are going to promote that culture of impunity, where certain people, they can do whatever they want and wreak havoc as much as they want, and we are not able to address it, I think that's an issue that, for me, is above everything else. That if we're going to have two laws for certain people, I mean, any people who can break laws and people who can't break laws. But that's not to say...
But it is good to put things into perspective. Who has broken the law?
Well, if somebody can...
Who has broken the law?
Somebody can swear himself as president and get away with it, you know, what more would be the ball if you tried it?
But
you would
in
be
this
accused.
context, when we were talking about yesterday, because now that is also fetching an example which is way too far.
If we are talking about yesterday,
yes, we are talking about
somebody
yesterday.
Says lawful officers have said this is outlawed. But this person still says, regardless of what you say, whoever you are, get out of the way. We are going to do it whether you want it or not. The bar. I think there must be certain rules.
But we need to challenge that. I'm not even advocating for what really happened yesterday.
Right.
But if there is a pronouncement from the government that this is illegal,
right?
On what premise is the government using that to say this is an illegality?
I think
because there is a constitution, he has a freedom to demonstrate and picket, and then we have a pronouncement that comes from government that this is an illegality. Wouldn't you challenge that, you as a Kenyan?
The Bal, as somebody who has been in this struggle from childhood, as a university student in 1982, and as somebody who has participated in Sabasaba demonstrations, actually participating with other colleagues, let me put it that while government has no right to block picketing,
right,
I'm also alive to the fact that when people start removing critical installations, like bringing down the expressway, like bringing down the rail line, like looting shops and burning vehicles, the bar really, that's anarchy. I think this is what I have a problem with.
Patrick brought it the first shot. And I think it's important that we also realize that you can't talk, this demonstration will be peaceful. We have seen what has happened. Yeah. So we take responsibility also from government. It will not be peaceful, but it doesn't mean shooting. We can actually do a proper managing that. And this cartoon is very interesting. You have somebody on top of a tree before you brought this other one. And he's saying, you need to take responsibility. But the other fellow also need to take responsibility. Because if you like Kenyans that they will be peaceful, they will not be peaceful. Why? The people you're dealing with are looking for opportunities. And we saw that even in 1992, when he had the coup.
Where?
No. It happening.
I think, let me...
yes, Bill, just continue.
No, I think we should not generalize that Kenyans are not by nature peaceful in their protests. I think that would be really wrong and very, very bad description of our society. I think we have seen many protests, forget about the political ones only, many other protests where Kenyans have come out and protested peacefully. And the challenge has always been, when it is political, government always outlaws it. And then that's why it becomes confrontational. But I think in a situation where you give you a notice, we want to have a rally at Kamukunji, and we are going to march from there to place X, and you have given the go-ahead, and you're giving them escort, nothing will happen. But invariably, the government doesn't allow that. Not this government, any government we have had in the last, they've been avoiding it. Why? Because that opportunity for people to be peaceful, you'll encourage many people to join the protest. And the thing becomes widespread, and that's what they don't want. So the government feels the best thing is stop these things. But let me say this, it's easy to say, many of the things can be dealt with, but, in a court of law, it's not very easy to prove that you as a leader, if you announce a protest and tomorrow something happens and then you take responsibility, that is not going to be a very easy thing to prove. I think what is important is, in this matter, gentlemen, people must talk to each other.
Yes.
There's no alternative to this. I mean, if I have decided that I want to cause chaos, for example, what you have said, one party says I'll cause chaos, and the other says I'm going to stop it by force. There's going to be chaos, no doubt. There'll be confrontation. And this is what we're saying, it won't work. The grandstanding by both sides is not going to help this country.
Right. And it seems, just a moment, it seems we are glossing over, because there's a very interesting article I wanted just to also bring on the table that Elias Mokua has written, that Raila is not Kenya's problem. Address real issues of concern. We seem to be glossing over the issue, and Raila being the poster child of this particular demonstration, everyone now will be halting and pelting stones on him. Because if we look there is actually a deliberate attempt, even from the legislators, to muffle the voices of wananchi. Because right now there is also a bill, I think the public order bill that is trying to amend protests, that is being sponsored by Geoffrey Ruku, a member of parliament from Bere, that anyone who is actually pushing for this protest should be held liable. If we are tinkering, we're hurtling on that particular direction, and there has been a deliberate attempt on some of the legislations, that the anti-corruption and economic bill seems to also want to change. We have also procurement regulations that needed to be amended, and people have been raising questions on some of these legislations. Now it's coming down also to your voice as a Kenyan. It is being challenged right now. I think we need to question where is all this really headed to right now, especially when it comes to protests. Because if we are not careful, this constitution will be all the provisions that are given there for Kenyans to actually have their liberties and freedoms in terms of expressions will be muffled.
I wanted to propose 3 solutions. The 3 solutions, the first one maybe is a correction.
No, before we go to the solution, I needed just to address, can we comment on that?
I think...
are we using Raila as a punching bag and a political... And a political excuse when it comes to this protest?
I think we would be cheapening this matter if we personalize it.
No.
No, but that's the
it's not a matter of
personalizing.
Because you're the one who has actually been saying if Raila is the problem.
If you allow me to hear me, I wanted to make a correction, then I'll make a point. You know, Patrick did say the opposition should be giving alternatives. I wanted to say, actually, I recall hearing Azimio giving alternatives during the finance budget or discussions. So actually, it's not for the lack of giving alternatives.
But they have kept quiet about it.
If you protect me from Patrick,
he's supporting you.
We need to put things in perspective so that we give credit where it's due.
He's so guarded.
Yes, I like giving credit, being objective. Give credit where it's due. In the same token, you know, when a senator is saying, no, what government should do, arrest people, take them to court. Now, when they say, and I'm no spokesperson for government, and I don't agree with a number of things this government does, but I agree with a number of things they do. When government arrests people, they take them to Central Police, we go to demand their release. So let's be also fair to government in that regard. But finally, the BAL, and in terms of the new laws that are being brought about, I think addressing, and maybe before I get to that, the aspect of dialogue. I fully support dialogue. But what I don't like is dialogue between 2 parties. Kenya is bigger than 2 parties. What we need is a national conversation, not a dialogue between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, because they only control a certain percentage of Kenyans. The more Kenyans didn't vote than those who voted for either of the presidential candidates. So while I support national conversation by all stakeholders, perhaps spearheaded by government, let's not reduce this to Dr. Ruto and Prime Minister Raila issue. That's the point I was trying to make.
Bill, you want to say something?
Yeah. I think that article is very appropriate. I think the issue here is the cost of living. It didn't start with the opposition, which is there now. It started before the election. When the current leader of Azimio was working with the previous government, the members of Kenya Kwanza who were then in opposition had the same issues of cost of living. And they had the same challenge. They have been tear gassed, they have been thrown out, you know, Kotano, in Kenol and where, all these things have been happening. They have been denied opportunity to hold rally in Kasarani, in Bakassi. And so the thing is, it's important to have that law, the right for any Kenyan, because tomorrow it will happen to you. These same people who are now speaking, because they're in Kenya Kwanza government, saying we want to amend the law so that there should be no protests. Or if you protest, you sign up something that you must pay for anything which happens. I think these guys would know that this thing would be, it happened to them tomorrow. It will be on your foot, on the other foot tomorrow.
Let me ask you a question.
I think let us not try to change the law every time somebody is in a position to protect himself. I think that would be a very
Let
wrong
me, for
position.
argument's sake, Bill, for all respect. Yes, go to Kasarani, go to where protest. You go, you do, whatever. So what? You'll be given that freedom. Do it.
Yeah.
So what's the bottom line?
Right.
That's a question we should be asking ourselves. I'll go for that, Larry.
Right.
But what is my agenda?
No. I think then we are missing a fundamental. The issue is the whole thing about this thing, the constitution, is about democracy. That the right for you, as a minority,
yourself.
who is not the majority in power. Wait a minute. No.
Given you to express yourself.
Professor, I thought you are at the university. I mean, honestly.
That's a mission. That's a mission.
I'm sorry, but what I mean is, the fundamental thing here is about the democracy. That you have the majority, you are in power. That's why you are there in power. But those minority have to be in a position to express their views. To say, and you protest, you say, look, I don't like this law. I don't like these things about gays. I don't like these things about, this fertilizer. People are in the streets all over the world from this issue or that issue. That's why that provision is there. But it is not about people wasting their time. It is, you feel strongly about something, the only way you can express it is out there.
A small reminder to Senator Bilo. He's reminding us that when the current Kenya Kwanza was in opposition, they were able to demonstrate. But he's being very economic with the truth.
I didn't say they were denied.
Telling us,
I said they were denied an opportunity.
What he's not telling us, I'm looking at a different side, Bwana Senator. He's not telling us how many people died, how many railway lines were uprooted, how many expressways were destroyed. That's where he's not saying, because how come those people, when they were wearing the shoe in the other foot, were able to demonstrate and do all that and were denied all that? But this chaos, which seems to be second name to certain people, didn't happen. That's where the fact that is ignoring which makes me disagree with that article.
Shem, I think the whole issue of saying that we do the same thing and expect different results, I think that is the bottom line.
Yeah, right? Across the board.
That's the bottom line. If you look at the way the constitutional rights have been translated into law, I think that's the key thing.
Yeah. Because
you got a constitutional right, but it's going to be translated into a series of things that you can and cannot do. So the law, the public order law, which is the one that governs these things, and I've actually opened it up because I didn't want to just speak out of nowhere, says that you put something in writing to the authorities. You don't ask for permission. You inform.
Notify, inform.
Right? And the only time they can deny you permission is if there's a parallel activity that is taking place.
I'm not sure.
That is the I've just
I'm not sure which public act you are reading, because there was one that was contentious, but it's also secondary to this law.
Let him finish. Let him finish. No, or are you reading the amended one?
I've opened the laws of Kenya. I've opened the laws of Kenya, which is available online, which is what I've done.
It's been the same all the time.
And it's been the same all the time. So this has not changed. It's not been changed in law or whatever. And that is what gives the issue of the freedom to whatever it is to actually set the rules of how you do it. Now, we have chosen to ignore that completely. Both this government and the previous government as well did exactly the same. They did not see the role of the police as facilitating peaceful demonstration. They saw the role of police as saying, we don't like these guys who are protesting, go and stop them. Right? And that, I think, is where we need to start thinking, both as opposition and as government, as Kenyans, that what the Constitution allows us to do is to do peaceful protest. I don't go and damage property, I don't go and do this and whatever it is. It is peaceful protest. And the way it is framed by the government, by the police, by everybody, should be leading us to peaceful protest. Not to warnings that you can't do it, if you do this, we're going to deal with you, and whatever it is, because the law itself says you can't stop me. I am allowed to do it only where there is another one.
And Shem, I think Bill had raised that issue, comparing what we had with last week's protest. where we saw even in Mombasa, the police were supporting, were not really supporting, I mean, they were facilitating the entire
march,
protest, and it was very peaceful. But the moment the pronouncement that this is illegal coming from the city interior minister, that is now setting the ground as a spawning ground for this protest to happen.
For confrontation.
For confrontation. Because now people will come out knowing that police now, they'll come to try and temper maybe their protest, or even altogether to try and challenge that particular protest. And my worry is, even as a journalist, because when we're infringing on the freedom of expression, this will also now come down to the moment where we, as a free media in this country, will be threatened by, you know, the strong arm of government trying to mollify us. And I'm surprised that even now, maybe you're questioning, I should come to you, Professor, are you questioning the place of demonstration in the Constitution? Because whether there's no effect...
freedoms. No, I think you're getting me wrong.
No, I'll give you time to...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I understand. Because even if I come and make noise with my megaphone and no one hears, at least I've expressed myself. For me, it will be very therapeutic. Maybe I will not be in a mental institution one day because there's no conduit for me to actually dispel all this frustration.
We need a Hyde Park corner in Kenya.
Yes. So that is an avenue, because I think whether there is result or not, my freedom must be protected for me to express myself. Whether there is nothing that is discernibly coming from government as a reaction to freedoms, that should be my responsibility. So if you ask the question, then what?
Let me ask you, let me make it extremely clear. Extremely clear. I believe in opposition. Issue-based opposition.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. So these are the harabarus, what. That's what I'm talking about. Less, because the government of the day has to be checked, and particularly the one we have. It has to be. Because there are certain fundamentals we have seen, even before the finished 1 year, probably would have been done differently. The only question I'm asking, rather putting here, the way perhaps you're dealing it is not the right way. And what areas you're saying, that's a very personal opinion. Laida is not the problem. Indeed, he is not. And it would be naive to say he's a problem. It's a fundamental that I go to the shops, I had 1,000 shillings, I can't buy what I used to buy. That's a fundamental. But he has a law he's playing. The way to go about it, in my view, can be done better. That's the point I'm making. I do believe strongly in opposition. And I support that freedom I have. That's protecting this constitution.
Correct.
You throw it away, I'm nobody. You, Bill, everybody. But the way we protect that, we must realize as opposition have a responsibility. The government has a responsibility. Let me, for example, if you go to those rallies and say, we know we are collecting this much taxes, it's a government. Have the numbers very clear. But our taxes is going to do this, to do that, to do that. We need to kill these loopholes. You're actually exposing what is making the cost of living go up. That's what I'm talking about. But you just go there and tell them, hey. But tell them, you have people behind you. Before you go to that rally, they'll tell you this is how we can deal with it. Right now, we talked last week, and I hope he has done that. 2 Rivers is a special economic zone. I hope you have already got there. And you actually demonstrate what does it mean. So you're actually bringing issues. But I'm holding a peaceful demonstration. I'm not talking with that. Yes. I think that's the point you're missing, people.
Yeah, it's good to clarify so that at least we know where are you for or against.
I don't think anybody's against the fundamental rights. Patrick was talking about Hyde Park. Maybe we could even add for New York the Statue of Liberty and all that, where people go can express themselves.
Those things are very dangerous. They must not even becoming naked, you know?
Yeah.
Need to be careful with it.
Those fundamental freedoms, including the freedom of the press, of the media, and freedom of speech are so well captured in the Constitution. Part of why I was talking about the Public Order Act is that any other law is secondary to this is the supreme law.
Yeah.
And this law is very clear. It says freedom of picketing, provided you are unarmed. I think really we try to translate the last part and forget that latter part. For me, as long as things could be peacefully done, and as long as this same constitution says everybody, even the head of state, is under this law. But we have a country where some people are above this law. That's part of the problem.
Well, because
why has peaceful not happened?
That's
And that is where I was
question.
coming
Yeah,
back to.
peaceful.
It is the pronouncements of the leaders
Correct.
that
Both
causes the
sides.
peace, both sides.
Correct.
That causes the peaceful not to happen. And that fundamentally is where we need to have a mindset change.
Right.
That recognizes that people can actually protest and express their whatever without
Sure.
being told, don't do this, don't do that. Being told, this is what you have to do. Write to the police station,
Right.
tell them you're going to do whatever it is, and we'll provide you with escort. And we will provide you with escort. And it has happened. It has been shown. And that has to be the constant message from the top.
Yeah.
And a case in point is one of our panelists, Deretu Mureithi, did exactly what you say. According to his side of the story, that letter was written in
Those, yes.
Laikipia. The law enforcement officers were aware that there will be demonstration, and he cannot be here because he's been arrested. Previously, he was arrested as then. Why then do you follow the due process of the law, and still you end up in a predicament that he is in right now because you're demonstrating? But the
It
mere
is
fact that there
because
has
the
been a
leadership has made a pronouncement
Correct, that
and
all
everybody is
processes have been
interpreting
legal.
it in their own
They
way.
have been directed.
Yeah. So that is the whole thing comes from the leadership.
And I think even why we're having a very heated debate is the fact that we are coupling Raila Odinga with this particular protest, which we're trying to uncouple.
No, let me say this, gentlemen. You know, in Professor, we've discussed here about 3, 4, 5 months when this protest started. Some of us made it very clear. We don't, like me, I've said, I don't necessarily support the issues, some of the issues that the opposition is pushing for in these demonstrations. I've said, for example, the IEBC thing, I don't agree with it completely.
Absolutely.
As far as I'm concerned,
Absolutely.
that election has been decided by the Supreme Court and it's done.
Excellent. Excellent.
I don't think they have the solutions or best solutions to address the issue of the cost of living. But for me, the most fundamental thing is they have, however, the right to protest.
True.
That they must be allowed to do. It's not about whether they have got an issue, an answer to the cost of living. They don't. They were there and they couldn't solve it. But the issue is they have a right to protest. So if somebody says...
Add peacefully.
Of course, peacefully. It is peaceful.
That's where the problem
No, there's no problem. We have always talked
It's
about
not fully interpreting the constitution.
No. I think, I don't have a prejudice. Dubal,
Yes.
when you have a prejudice against some people,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I don't have a prejudice against anyone. That's why I don't have these problems that Shem has. That Shem has always
Shem
worry
is
about
operating from a
certain
confirmation
individuals.
bias.
Yes, he has a bias. So,
still has
when
some
we are
hang-ups.
talking about here, it's peaceful protests. That's what the law talks about, by the way.
Thank you.
So the issue is that fundamental right must be protected. For me, that is the most important thing. And the person who has the great responsibility is the government to ensure that there are peaceful protests. But I think when you start saying no one can do this, and the other party says, I'm going to do this, then this country, yesterday we had so many, I'm told, investors in the country, and we were told we're open for business. But let me tell you, you cannot tell any investor you're open for business when there is economic and political instability. You can't. You have to address
That's
that.
a discussion on another story.
Yeah.
Because,
We need to take a short break. It's 8 o'clock right now. And even that, the market was a bit sanguine and optimistic yesterday, despite the fact that we had all these skirmishes happening, looking at what is on the front page of the Business Daily, how markets are shrugging off opposition-led protests. That is Nairobi Security Exchange gained 10 billion shillings to 1.783 trillion shillings on Wednesday. Investors develop apathy to political noise, and that is, of course, coming